Four species, four agendas, one unanswered question. Why is humanity so important to them?
What do you see when you're in the dark and the demons come?
One, two, married stories for you.
Welcome to Buried Stories. I'm Jeff Mercurio. With me tonight, Wendell Brown. Wendell, how are you doing?
Super, Jeff. Super. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking. That's mighty kind of you. And also with me, my brother Steve Mercurio. Steve, how
What's
are you
going
doing
on,
this
man?
evening?
I'm doing good, man. I'm living life, excited, and again, another great buried story, I'm sure. And yeah. So hey,
Good. All right, gentlemen, tonight's story, I will bring it up. I was digging, and this is what I found. It is May 19th, 1971. Get this, Lorain, Ohio. Man named Michael Turner had never believed in flying saucers. At 11:43 p.m., he was driving home along a lonely stretch of road near the Black River when his radio dissolved into static as he was driving. The headlights dimmed, the engine died. So he looks up, then the sky opens. A blinding light swallowed his truck. Michael screamed as his body lifted through the roof, as if steel wasn't even there, right through the top. The next thing you knew, he was lying naked on a cold metal table. Starting to sound familiar? The room was impossibly silent. Standing around him were three figures. Thin, gray, large black eyes. No mouth, no ears, expressionless. He heard a voice. Michael. The voice echoed directly inside his skull. So he screamed out, what do you want? Was wondering why they took him. One of the beings stepped forward. His eyes reflected like black mirrors. We are what your people call grays. Michael tried to sit up, but he had invisible restraints holding him down. So they kind of knew his thoughts. And he heard himself in his mind go, where are you from? Not a single world. Our origin lies beyond the star system that you called Zeta Reticuli. Though your understanding of space is incomplete. The being placed a long silver instrument right beside Michael's head. We study developing species. Humanity is one of many. Study by kidnapping people? The gray tilted his head. Observation, genetic preservation, adaptation research. Michael's heart started to hammer. What about cattle mutilations? Now, who thinks when they're on a table to ask about cattle mutilations? But the voice answered immediately. Biological sampling, tissue analysis, environmental monitoring, efficient collection. Michael felt sick. The gray continued as if it was discussing the weather. You call them mysteries because you assume you were alone, is what they said to him. One of the beings approached carrying a tray of strange instruments, sharp, needle-like, glittering. Michael began to panic. Please don't. There are others besides you, the gray said. Glowing image started appearing above the table. The first figure looked human, but impossibly beautiful. Tall, golden eyes, radiant. The tall ones, ancient travelers, observers. They interfere rarely. Some among them wish to guide your species, the alien was telling him about. The image vanished. A second appeared, reptilian, towering, armored scales, predatory eyes. Michael felt dread wash over him. The Gray said, "These are conquerors, expansionists. They value power above all. That influence appears throughout your history. As you could tell, yeah, we also value power above all, it seems." That image dissolved. A third image, in a impossibly shape-shifting light between light and shadow, neither physical nor entirely visible. These are the Watchers, existing partly outside your reality. They do not think as a biological life thinks. Their intentions remain uncertain. Which one should humanity fear, he thought, and you can't hold nothing from the Gray. For the first time, the Gray paused, its enormous eyes fixed on him. The species humanity should fear most is itself. The room became colder. The Gray leaned closer. You stand at the edge of transformation. Within decades, your world will be connected by invisible networks. Machines will learn, information will become power, nations will fracture, climate change. Your species will possess godlike tools without godlike wisdom. This was in 1971, remember? Now look at us. Michael stared. The being raised a needle, long, thin, glowing blue. "What are you doing?" "Recording." The needle moved right toward his eye. Michael thrashed violently, but he couldn't move. "No, no." The Gray's voice remained calm. "Fear is temporary. Knowledge persists." The needle touched his pupil. Agony exploded through Michael's skull. He screamed. The room vanished. The stars vanished. The Grays vanished. Darkness swallowed everything. Then silence. Michael opened his eyes. Morning sunlight poured in through his window. Birds chirping outside. He was home, in bed, alone. His wife was making coffee downstairs. For several minutes he lay motionless, convincing himself it had all been a nightmare. Then he noticed something on the nightstand, a small metallic object, no larger than a coin, perfectly smooth, not a single seam on this thing. As Michael reached for it, a voice whispered deep inside his skull, the same voice he remembers, cold, emotionless, waiting. "We are not finished, Michael." And that's the last thing Michael remembers from that whole story. Like I said, that was 1971, Lorain, Ohio. Is it real or is it fictional? You be the judge. So tonight, gentlemen, our story is on the 4 different major species of aliens. So, Steve, the story, how'd you like it? And what do you think? Is that one real or is that one a non-buried story?
Well, first of all, I like the fact that it hits close to home. Our
Yeah.
stomping grounds, Lorain, Ohio, man. What a
Yeah.
special city. I always called it the city of blue collared workers and broken dreams. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, with situations like this, stories, because a lot of this, what kind of catches me off guard is a lot of these stories sound so similar. As you were kind of going through that, a couple stories came to mind. First one, when you had mentioned the car shutting down and everything, Trumbull County, the police officer, if you remember, had a very similar situation where his car shut off, he couldn't turn it back on, and then he saw the bright lights. And then, as soon as you talked about this gentleman being on the metallic table, I started thinking of Fire in the Sky, because that
Yeah.
is probably, I'd say, honestly, the scariest 20 minutes of any film that I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
Not
I
even
agree.
ghosts or any other things I've ever seen on TV or anything have ever scared me like those 20 minutes of Fire in the Sky. So, it's hard to tell because at the end of the day, when these people end up back at home, or like, you can ask the question, how did he get home? He was taken from his car. How did his car
Right.
get home? Right. So
Exactly.
is it something mental? Is it a nightmare? Is it something being time manipulation? I don't quite know. Don't quite know.
Wendell, there was a story. That's why we're talking about it tonight. There was a story about Hal Puthoff. I don't know if you know Hal Puthoff, but he worked with the CIA and he worked with the government. So he goes on this podcast and the podcast is called Diary of a CEO. It's on Spotify. You can check it out, everybody. It's a good podcast, dude. Anyway, he's talking with the host, and he starts talking about, hey, we have biologics from down spacecraft, and there are 4 different types of species, major species of aliens. He goes on talking, but he does not have proof himself, so he's getting it from another party. So he doesn't have it himself, but he's talking as if this is true. Now, I don't know how well you take that, Wendell, or if what do you say about this subject of the 4 different alien types?
First of all, nice story. Really
Oh,
good.
thank you.
I like that you dated it in 71. Um, yeah, and I know that Hal put off stuff. I've seen it. Uh, what do I think about I find it hard to believe there's only 4.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's much more complex than that. That's what I think anyway. Don't really the reptilian, I think you said the shadow people. That's more spiritual. That could be the angel and demon thing from a different realm. Also heard of the insectoids. I don't really buy into those or haven't had a lot of knowledge of seeing them. The grays are obviously the prevailing one that we hear from the most, and they make sense. Small bodies and big eyes for all the reasons that we know about space. Um, reptilians. What I've always heard is the flying saucers are the grays, the triangles are the reptilians, and I don't know what the flying saucers are also the Nordics. Is that the
Yeah.
one you're talking about that looks human?
Yep.
That's scariest to me. People, aliens that look like us, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I think we try to personify aliens as being like us, bipedal, um, you know, 3 to 7 feet, 9 feet tall, something like that, something we can relate to, like us. Um, I do find it odd that back in the 70s, the V movie came out and the reptilians were on a triangle ship,
Mhm.
that uh, a V-shaped ship. So I don't know if that's coincidence or there was some knowledge leaking out from the seams. But as far as your story, I thought it was fantastic. Do I believe in it? I believe in it. Those 4 as much as anything else. I mean, we don't even have one that we verified. I think we're pretty close on the grays.
Right.
The grays must be the most curious. You know what I mean? They must be the most
Yeah.
scientifically curious in what uh, makes us tick and why all the research if in 1971 you can tell us what the future holds. Why do you really need all the research and the biological testing if you already know the future?
Right.
uh, so that's a little bit odd, but the grays I'd lean to that I believe in the most, that uh and Zeta Reticuli is the place they're supposedly coming from.
Yeah,
um
you hear that a lot.
But, if the reptilians are real, I think we got a problem. And if we've already seen them here, or one thing that is encouraging, I do think we have the technology now to screw with them. I think we have, the EMTs and things that we have the ability to mess up their function. if you know what I mean, in some way. Um, but do we want to? I mean, we're always coming from a position of we got to conquer or kill. Why can't we just see what it is? Just wait, see what it is, and God forbid we wait too long, and there goes us. Um, but as far as your original question, those four are as legitimate to me as any four suggested so far. I just find it hard to believe there's only four. I think it's much more complex, much more. It's much deeper than we just personify it in something we can understand. I think.
It's
Let's talk
interesting.
about the Greys for a moment here, Steve. Like since they're always like in all these stories, it's always been the Greys. And I remember a book that came out, Communion. Who was that was abducted? Wasn't Travis Wilton that wrote that?
No, he
The
was
name's
frequent guest on Art Bell.
yeah,
Didn't it start
it
with an
might
Betty and
R?
Barney Hill were abducted by Greys, they say.
No, that's
yeah,
true.
Benny and
That
Barney
is true.
Hill, but that first image, that real good image of the Grey was put on the cover of Communion, the book, and then the movie came out. So that kind of immortalized like the Greys into our mind when we think about aliens. And Benny and Barney Hill were abducted, and they talk about Greys a lot, and as far as Travis Wilton as well. So what do you think about the Greys? What do you think they want? Are they working for themselves, or are they working under somebody else? What do you got to say, Steve?
Well, it's kind of go back a moment here. My understanding of the Greys and all of their potential kidnapping and whatnot of humans is there's potential talk of some sort of government agreement between humanity, or at least our government, Washington, and potentially the Greys. And it has to do with technology versus genetics, right? So, what we benefit, or our government potentially benefits from, is, you know, technology that we've never seen before, technology from different world, that could potentially give us superiority over other countries, right? But at the same time, the agreement on the other side is that they were allowed to abduct so many humans in order to do genetic testing, different species for genetic testing. There's also talk of a hybrid program. Now, I'm not sure if it has to do with any of the other four species that you talked about, or if it's more specific to the Greys, but it seems like every single time you hear a story from Greys, it has something to do with them kidnapping us, taking us up there. You have the cold table, you have all of these different, it looks like medical apparatus, a lot of needles, a lot of samples. Also, I believe you always get the metal fragments that are left behind in people. Now, I don't know if that's something to mark us, something for us for them to come back, but they've done X-rays. Now, nobody's ever been able to definitively say that these metal items are out of
Right.
this world, but it always seems to go hand in hand with the stories of the Greys. So,
Yeah, I agree with you. Now that you brought up the implants that they put in, it's almost like they're tagging. We tag cattle, and then we also tag like sharks and monitor where they float. And so it's almost possible that we're being tagged, so we could be watched from whoever's watching us and stuff. So that's kind of interesting.
also, just keep in mind that the stories you hear are generational. You have potentially grandparents when they were younger that were abducted, then their kids start getting abducted. And then once they kind of get a little bit older, their grandkids are getting abducted. It's almost like the Greys are kind of tracking each generation to see how the genetics go forward. Are they inserting apparatus? Are they inserting genetics, DNA codes into each generation? It can kind of go back to that maybe hybrid discussion, or maybe they're just tracking. And I've also heard stories of people who've been abducted that have had terminal illnesses, cancers, different, different illnesses that they pretty much, and that some of these people have been healed as a result of this.
As far as grays, now when they all this a lot of the stories that they always seem to be working. They're the ones that, me, and they're around you, and instruments are going everywhere. Some of these stories that you read is like these grays are the workers, the drones, and then all of a sudden in comes the mantis, and the mantis is looking at you, and the grays are still working, and then that leaves. Do you think the grays are working under the mantis, or you think it's a separate issue?
I do. I've had thoughts of the Greys not being a, a species of their own. Almost maybe they are. It's like Corso was saying, the ones that flew the ships, they were made to fly the ships. And I think I see the Greys as being engineered that way. You guys talked about the implants and stuff. What's the only reason to implant anything is to track it. That tells me they don't know enough. They don't know all they want to know about us. And I've always heard that isn't there an H blood type? In one of the blood types H? Let's see, O positive, you got AB. Is there a blood type with it? There's one of the blood types that's specifically been thought to attract them for what Steve was talking about, hybrid purposes. And
That one, Wendell, is the H
is it
blood type, often referred to as HH or OH. It's an
yeah,
extremely rare blood type found in
yeah,
only about 1 in 10,000 people here.
that's the one. That's the
Yeah,
one here a lot of the abductees have, a lot of um, that that genetic makeup of people who have that blood type is, either they inserted it or they're attracted to that one. And I said, "No," and I'm O positive, so no wonder I never see anything. But,
yeah,
yeah, the, but that's what I've always heard is the H blood type is is what they're interested as far as contact goes, and they're able to contact those folks. But
right.
as far as the Greys, like I said, gosh, I gotta stop saying that. I don't like it when I say that. Regarding the Greys, they appear to me to be physically constructed how we will need to be constructed to spend long time periods out in space. From the eyes, from the smaller nose, so you don't inhale everything, to the smaller frame due to the lack of gravity. So, but Corso's view always made sense to me also, that these things were made to fly these craft. And then we go back to what I mentioned a couple episodes ago. What if the craft are alive and not things, there's nothing in them on some of these sightings as far as disclosure goes, and that's a whole nother realm of life forms, um, popping in and out of dimensions and things like that. But but yes, I do think the Greys are worker bees. I don't think that they are a specific master race. And maybe that's where, like you said, the insect type or the reptilians are in the background somewhere. And these are the
Right.
worker bees. That could be.
So that's the grays, gentlemen. Next one up that we keep coming across in a lot of stories is the ones that are called the Nordics, which are tall and human. And what it says is they're described as tall, human looking beings with blonde hair and blue eyes. You hear that a lot. And George Adamski in the 1950s claimed to have met friendly extraterrestrials from planets within our solar system. That's our solar system. Described them as attractive, human looking beings who warned humanity about the war and nuclear weapons. I've always been told, or you read stories, that these are the ones that guide you spiritually, and that they have always been there once we started like developing nuclear weapons. They're the ones that try to prevent nuclear conflict, and they always encourage peaceful development. So, Steve, as far as the Greys, number one is I hear they're attractive. Would you like to meet one?
Absolutely. Seriously, from what I understand, they're very tall. I would assume they're very beautiful people. I've always heard they're very benevolent, like you were talking about, kind of almost like spirit guides in many ways, except they're much taller than us. Look, I mean, it's one of those situations where, we ask the question all the time with different species of aliens, but could any of these be us in the future? We've talked about this in the past, right? We've had these
Mhm.
conversations. And are they potential time travelers? Are they us in the future? If there was any one of these species that I could potentially see being us in the future, it's definitely the Nordics. And maybe they know they're not allowed to involve themselves, to a certain degree in our current status, because they're not maybe not allowed to manipulate time, but because that could affect maybe if they are us in the future, thousands of years, millions of years, maybe that's what they're telling us, they're warning us, but they're essentially cannot get involved with us. And maybe that's us in the future. And who knows what makes them taller than us? Who knows what makes them, that could be space travel alone. So it's interesting. Out of all the genes, I would like to know, if you took their DNA versus our DNA, how close would it be? Because they
That's
definitely
true.
could seem superior to us.
Yeah, yeah, but with that being said, if they look beautiful, our future looks really bright, doesn't it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Wendell, one of the guys you bring up along with Bob Lazar, is you always bring up this gentleman, his pictures, and that he met these Nordics. So
Yeah, our pal Billy Meyer. That's who he did.
Billy Myers, that's it. Talk a little bit about Billy Myers and
Yeah.
his thoughts on the Nordics, or did he see them?
These I do believe in. I do believe in, and I like that your intro said that they are very rare, because they are. You don't hear a lot about them. Billy Meyer said a lot about them, and, this also leads me to believe why I think it's more complex than we can even fathom. The Greys relate to space and the effects of space on a biological organism. The Nordics, although not spiritual, because they came in crafts, according to Billy, they came in a craft, but they are very benevolent. They're the age of Aquarius aliens to me. They, they're very not stern as in saying you're doing things wrong, but they're passive aggressive, you know what I mean? Um, or we gotta be careful. The but the Nordics, I think these might be where you start getting into interdimensional stuff
Hmm,
or
interesting.
black hole stuff, not
Yeah.
necessarily pure space travel, and the effects of space on them. So, but I do believe in these. I think, and like I said, I was pretty impressed that you mentioned they're very rare in your intro, because they are. Current are very rare with these, and and they don't interfere. Is the neat thing. They kind of do it the way I would like for us to do things too. But we don't have to kill them when we see them, and this race seems very benevolent in trying to guide us and seeing that where we're going, and that it could be better. Not that we're going somewhere it's going to just totally end in destruction, like you always hear, but it could be better. And and it's almost like teachers, if you could say. But um, yeah, I lean towards these are real, and the grays are more common, and these are real, and like I said, Billy Meyer left no doubt. I mean, he left no detail out on these things, and they're exactly as you described. The blonde Nordic, almost like have you guys seen the Lord of the Rings movies?
Yeah, yeah,
Almost like the elves,
yep,
sort of like that. Wise, wise.
right.
Um, but yeah, I lean towards thinking they're real. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk about the polar opposite of the Nordics. The Nordics seem to be nice, understanding. They value. It seems like they value life. So let's talk about the reptilians, because you do hear those in some stories that I've come across. The reptilians, and notable things about the reptilians. Most reptilian stories come out of modern UFO researchers. I mean, if you look at some of these conspiracy theories about our government and stuff, like they're being inspired by reptilians. So you see that a lot, and there's no single famous abduction case. Some abductees have claimed that the reptilians being appeared alongside Greys. So now they're saying that these guys or the Greys work for these guys. So, but these guys were popularized by David Icke, helped popularize the idea that beings secretly influence human society, though these claims are not supported by evidence. They seem to be very controlling, maintaining influence over Earth, hierarchical leadership over other alien species. Steve, these guys do not sound like they're fun to be around.
No, I mean, it's funny because we always talked about, are we the only species on Earth? Like the only really truly intelligent species on Earth? And every time I hear about the reptilians, these are the ones that I hear that could potentially have already been here or already are here or submitted themselves within our society. These are the ones that we definitely hear could potentially be, I don't want to say hybridized, but these are the ones that some speculate already live underground and have for centuries. These are the ones that you hear potentially are the ones that are flying ships into the water, potentially have worlds underwater so deep that our human technology cannot get to. Um, these are the ones that supposedly have been here. The way I understand and just describe them, they're very tall, very strong. And also, they could have developed these reptilian features on a planet that potentially could have been extremely hot, more desert like. And that's why they're built the way they are. And isn't it funny that, as we keep talking about climate change, it's supposedly getting hotter, and could it be when you talk about this government control and our push, could these be the ones that are changing, like pushing humanity to change our own temperatures just by influencing how we the pollutants that we use and everything else? Could we be changing Earth to support their life versus our life? you know? So I
Yeah.
don't think these are benevolent creatures by any mean. That's not something I've ever heard utilized when it comes to the reptilians. But yeah, I think the scariest part of them is that these are the ones that are always mentioned to already be here.
Yeah, and you know what? Shapeshifter is the word I was looking for. You hear that a lot. They called Hillary Clinton a shapeshifter in one of these conspiracy theories that went around YouTube and stuff like that. So I don't know. Wendell, what would you do if you came across one of these reptilians? And do you believe them?
The Klingons here, um, I don't know so much about these are the Klingon species to me.
Gotcha.
Like I said, the Age of Aquarius ones are the Nordics. The little worker bees, curious dudes are the Greys. Greys are from Zeta Reticuli. And now this isn't what I believe. In fact, this is all the evidence points to this. Okay.
Right.
The Nordics are from the Pleiades or
Pleiades. Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like Orion's belt area. Um, and I don't know where the hell the reptilians are from. Um, One, they're very noticeable, I would think. If so, they're not just cruising around, Steve. Maybe the Black Pyramid in Alaska. Maybe that's them underground. Um, I think they would be very noticeable. I keep going back to that V series back in the late 70s. It's remarkable. They were reptilians and they were shaped well, they could look like us. And
Right, right.
it's just very curious. But I don't know if the reptilians are more our imagination and what we think a bad guy would look like from space. Um, and not totally sold on the reptilians. Not as when I hear about reptilians and I hear about um, the insect ones, I think it puts our pursuit back. It I don't even like talking about them a lot because I think that's what people who don't want to believe point to. Look at them; they believe in walking lizards, 9-foot lizards, and I don't I just haven't I don't know enough about this particular race, haven't heard enough evidence to think that they're around at all, actually.
I got you.
So no,
Well,
I'm
I
not
mean,
really sold on the reptilian, and I think when we talk about them and we don't have some eyewitness account or something, it pushes our effort back as far as trying to pursue the truth of do these things exist, but that's just me.
Gotcha.
let me challenge you for a second on that, Wendell. Just throwing out some ideas here. I look, I question their existence as well. They always seem to be on the outer perimeter of conspiracy theory. I always, whenever you hear about reptilians, you see these weird videos that where you'll see the cross eyes, like almost like the cat
Yeah,
eyes. That seems
yeah,
to be a reptilian feature and everything. But uh, you know, at least the theory goes, and I believe it, that our world used to be essentially the living species that controlled at that time were dinosaurs, right? We always hear now we honestly have no idea what dinosaurs look like. Our current scientists kind of always painted them as kind of reptilian in many ways, but then now the theory seems to be that a lot of these dinosaurs had feathers, right? That they're closer to birds now than they are lizards, right? But at the same time, they always found species of reptiles that existed or coexisted when dinosaurs lived, right? So I mean, look, I mean, I guess maybe in a different dimension or a different time span, if dinosaurs um, kept living as long as kept going, could they have evolved into something greater? It's or maybe in a different planet somewhere. Maybe the reptilians had billions of years to evolve, and maybe that's where they came from. So I agree with you, Wendell. They're kind of more on the outer perimeter of what we think, but it was one of the mention on this what was it called, the um podcast Diary of a CEO. It was
yeah.
one of the four mentioned,
Yeah, it was. It was. He did.
which
You're
which
right. I
by the
saw.
way, when they talked about this, they talked about us potentially having like a sample of one of these that obviously, Wendell, they did mention there at least four types. So I think that goes back to what you were talking about, how there can't just be four types. That would be ridiculous. Like if you're thinking about space and how much expansion there is and how many potential life forms, they just said at least four species, but these four were specifically mentioned as potentially us having crashes and us having potential, samples or you know, non-human biologics.
Yeah, I
So,
have heard one story about the reptilian, and that's the one we mentioned before that had a crash had a crashed craft, and somebody saw them on the side of the road, and they were reptilian, and they were by a military base. And the person, and they communicated with them without talking, but they communicated, they understood them. And they said, well, we can go get help over here. We're by this military base. We can go right over here and get help. And the alien, the reptilian alien said, no, I don't want to go help from those, don't want to go see those barbarians. I did hear that story, and that was a reptilian that had crashed and knew that our military, you know, the only outcome of that would be a dissection for him, you know. There wouldn't be any help getting your craft going because he was just needing one element to get his craft going. And that's what he asked the human to help him with, is to find this, I need this to get it going. And,
Yeah, well, the one thing,
but
I mean, you're right in saying that, when, we do, that's the way we act. We would,
oh, it's
put
right
it
on.
on a table and dissect it.
It was right on. Yeah. I wouldn't want,
Mhm.
knowing us, if you knew us at all, um, yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to out yourself to us.
No, no.
And when you think of the Greys, they're more fragile. I can see capturing them, like the CIA guy was talking about. I can see that, crash, fragile being. Yeah, we got bodies.
Right.
Nordics, nope. I don't think there's any capturing them, and I have never heard of any. And the reptilians, if, like I said, if that story's true, I just told, obviously they're not here just for combat and to conquer. They have other interest in some way. Um, but I would think having the technology that would be required to get here from long distances, we wouldn't really be much of a adversary to them besides
Right.
them by themselves, and needing our help, and then we capture them and cut them up and all that. But as far as them against us, I don't think we would be really put up much of a fight for somebody that had that kind of technology to get to us. So, but that's also if they know anything about us. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're around and they really don't know us. They're trying to find out they do not know what we can do and can't do. I mean, we show it pretty quick and obvious, but maybe it's not obvious to them. You know what I mean? They don't speak our
Yeah.
language. They can't hear us complaining and griping and talking about how bad we are and how easy it would be to overthrow us. Maybe they don't necessarily understand us in that depth of understanding, and that's why they still are just observing. Uh, but yeah.
That could be, and I don't know if you guys heard this, but I remember growing up and I heard a story. Maybe it was on our, maybe Steve, you might remember it, or Wendell, this might have come across your desk at one point in time. But there was a battle between an alien species that lived underground and the U.S. Army, and there was some gunfire going back and forth. I don't know what the reptilians used or anything like that, but are you guys familiar with any of that? I guess there was some U.S. casualties and stuff. Like I said, it was a story, but I don't know if it's true or not.
I've never heard that one. I might have missed that episode of Coast to Coast, but you had mentioned again. It kind of goes back to that same theory that of the reptilians potentially being here even before us, living underground, living in areas
Mhm.
that we can't penetrate, or with our current technology, we don't have that ability to. Um, you know, Part of my thinking with them is, we mention other species. Maybe there's some sort of like space law between all these other in beyond these four, but kind of don't mess with early civilizations, don't, and so maybe that's a reason we haven't been conquered yet by any other species. But potentially they are allowed to maybe scientifically study us, which would kind of go back to kind of what the Greys are doing. And so it'd be interesting, but yeah, it's I've never heard that story.
I
I
got
have,
you.
Jeff. Is that the one where the guy surprised him in a bu kind of a platoon surprised him in a tunnel under,
That's it.
and there was a fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that guy ended up getting killed. He
Yes.
told
That's what I
the story,
heard.
and he ended up getting killed. Uh, but, yeah, he was adamant that, they were reptilian too. That's 2 reptilian stories I didn't recall. Um, but yeah, they surprised him in the tunnel. They
Yep.
surprised him in the tunnel, and, like, 16 people got killed.
Yeah.
And, the, um, the guy that actually outed that story later didn't live long after. He was at a UFO conference, actually,
Yeah.
and revealed it, and then he died in a strange way at home, um,
Yep.
not long after that.
Right. Right. All right, guys. The last one that I see is the mantis or insectoid being. Now, this one's kind of freaky if you ever really looked at a mantis, because that thing, that insect, when it's on the side of the rat, it turns its head that creepy way it does, and it looks at you. This darn thing looks at you. This mantis is always described as being real tall, insect-like entities resembling praying mantises. Many abduction stories sees the mantis and describes them as being the overseer for procedures conducted by the Greys. So here's another one. Maybe the Greys work for everybody. The mantis entities are often portrayed as highly intelligent and occupying leadership roles. The common alleged intention of these beings are supervising genetic experiments, studying human consciousness, and directing gray alien activities. Some of these stories that you hear, everybody's always missing time. And they say that these mantis one can have you miss time, being taken aboard craft, medical examinations, telepathic communications, and everybody's being returned with fragmented memories. So that's the little bit about these mantis. If you can imagine, Steve, I would not want to see one of these mantis beings in my bedroom.
No, I think they were described as the tallest of this species that out of the four we had mentioned. I think the second highest being the Nordics out of them. But no, I think these are probably the most mysterious, right? I mean,
Hmm.
again, we've kind of have stories of the other three, but the mantis seem to be the least known. It'd be interesting since this was one of the species mentioned. Now, on the show, I believe they called them insectoids, but I've never heard that term used for this type of species. I've always heard mantis throughout the years, even when they would come up occasionally on Coast to Coast AM. They were always perceived with that same type of shape of a mantis head, the same type of eyes. So it's kind of crazy you bring up the mantis eyes because that and those eyes seem pretty close to what the Gray's eyes,
Yeah,
in a sense, big, now different, partially different shaped, but still these kind of big black eyes. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I mean, I think that these are probably the most mysterious. Um, uh, Probably the least understood. And if they're as smart as you're talking about them being, they would want to keep it that way, right? I
right.
mean,
Hmm.
honestly, where they come from, I've never heard that spoken about. I've never heard what type of ships they potentially use. So but I have heard stories of the mantis. I don't have a clue if they're malevolent or benevolent. No idea. But I'll be honest with you, I mean, that'd probably be out of all of them the least that I would prefer to meet, just by the way they look. And I hate to say that because they could potentially be benevolent, right? I mean, we have
Right.
that's the mystery. We don't have a clue what the mantis are, but hey, I think that's the mystery of it, and we definitely love a good mystery.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Randall, since you kind of like put the reptilian ones to the side, how do you feel about the mantis and sectoid ones?
Same way, same thing. They're supposed to be the most intelligent, and their fragile body, I mean, kinda leans you towards space travel like the Greys, but, um, no, I don't put much credence. I put actually, you mentioned in your intro, the Watchers,
Hmm.
and I guess that would be a fifth one. But I actually, with the Russians Russian cosmonauts that witnessed, I think 5 of them flying in space, uh, without no craft, just exist, and, with no craft, and they just come and go as they please. But, kinda more believe in those than I do the insectoids, but, of course, the insectoids are a good villain, um,
Mm,
and I think generated from our imagination to some extent. Never, at least to my recollection, I've never heard a story about them. And
right.
you're talking about one that invaded that could easily walk over us, it would be that one because everybody would just freak out and give up
I can see that. Yes.
on small insects,
Right. Right.
less 9 footers. Um, but, uh, yeah, I think that's an add-on one. I don't just don't know enough, haven't heard enough about them or evidence, but again, that CIA guy mentioned them in the
Yeah.
4,
Yes, he did.
and I find it that's the 4 they say they found that they had.
Right.
Like the Watchers would be another category, and God knows how many others that are in the sea or have visited, or the Anunnaki, things like that have come to Earth. What's the alien one now with the big 10-foot white ash looking guy? You know what I'm talking about? You seen that latest Alien show? Hell, I can't think of the name of it. But,
Uh,
that's more like the Anunnaki, the one
right. Okay.
supposedly seeded us here. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? Um,
Yeah. I do.
the Ends up with a P, I believe. But those 4, and I guess that's the context of the show, was the 4 was what the CIA guy mentioned that they had biologics from,
Right.
and
Right.
those 4, and if they do, that's pretty impressive. And um, Steve mentioned the insect the insectoids. I've never heard what kind of craft they would fly in or they would come in on, ever. I have no idea what theirs would be.
Right.
The egg's big, that's one that's getting more attention now, and we had Mork and Mindy back in the '70s,
Yeah.
and he came to Earth on an egg. I find it
Right.
odd, um,
Yeah.
that now there's stories coming out of retrievals of eggs, big space
Really?
that are eggs, yeah. The,
Wow.
there's a big one out now that's, guy he was a contractor, and that's what he did. He would get called and fly out in the helicopter, and him and his team would retrieve things. And the egg was, one that he retrieved that actually he said that he felt more emotion when he was taking that back than ever before, because it was like it got in his head, and it wasn't evil at all. It wasn't bad at all. It was, I mean, he said he was crying while he was flying. He was so emotional. And, that might be one of the ones we're talking about. The crafts are alive,
Right. Yeah.
not something necessarily in it, but, uh,
Well, the shape
yeah,
makes sense,
or
Wendell.
what's that?
The shape of an egg makes sense from an aerodynamic
It
standpoint,
does.
right? Would
It
have
does.
no wind resistance, right? I
It
mean,
does.
so that type of shape of a craft makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, and not just wind from a wind standpoint, but like we were talking about the warp drive, the circular, the spreading that shield out around something round just makes sense. A sphere, an egg, something to where the shield went around something. The triangles are a little more difficult to get with that, but again, it's pretty equilateral all the way around. Um, so I could buy that as well. But yeah, the egg one is again more came to Earth in an egg. What would ever make them in the 70s have an alien come to Earth in an egg?
Yeah, yeah. I
Somebody
don't
knew something. Somebody,
somebody saw something.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's incredible. Well, Steve, so that's our 4 aliens for tonight. Number 1, do you think the government has biologics? And if
I
so,
do.
when do you think they'll, put them out? This next tranche?
No, no, I don't think we ever see them. I think these are the toaster strudels I talked about. They're
Mm,
feeding us toast when they have toaster strudels. This is the stuff that they will never release. Now, I could potentially see them using some of these biological samples from a pharmaceutical standpoint. We always talk about pharmaceutics, right, being as a powerhouse of industry in our country and all across the earth. So I could potentially see, we always talk about some of these files being not with the government so that they cannot be seen by humanity when we do these requests for information. So I could potentially see that, but I don't think we ever see. I don't think we ever do. I mean, the only way we're going to see what these things look like is someday potentially if one of these ships, and I would say it'd probably be most likely the Greys that actually land, or we have this disclosure day coming up. What did Steven Spielberg know? Right? This guy's been
right.
making alien movies for a very long time, and there's always been this weird conspiracy that he's been fed information to make movies about to prepare humanity for a greater disclosure. And now we have this coming Friday, I believe it's coming out, Disclosure Day. So I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So but in all honesty, and unless we see something like that, I don't think we ever get to see the samples or the non-human biologics.
What about you, Wendell? Do you think we have them, and will we ever see them?
Yes, I think we have them. I think they're deader than a doornail. No way they're alive. And no, we will never see them or hear about them. And Spielberg even said that NASA wrote him a 20-page letter um, begging him not to produce uh, Close Encounters. Be-
Really?
yeah, because
Wow.
their reasoning was that this guy made a shark movie and everybody's afraid of sharks now at the beach.
Oh, yeah.
So that was NASA's take on it.
Yeah.
Was it?
Interesting, interesting. Well, that's our 4 species. Steve, any, final thoughts on the 4 different types?
Going back to what you just said, Wendell, isn't it funny that in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when you actually do get to see the Greys at the end of the movie, they appear to be benevolent, right? They're smiling. So maybe Steven Spielberg, honestly, that was his touch, his final kind of Easter egg back to NASA. Like, okay, I'm not here to try to make these scary, right? That makes a lot of sense what you just said, Wendell. And I kind of like that thought, that imagery that because I'm telling you, when you see them at the end of that movie, they're waving at humans and they're
Mhm.
smiling and they're playing these cute little tunes, right? And we're playing them back and everything. So it's not made to be a malevolent encounter, right? It's made to be more benevolent, kind of a cross of science, right? So, but look, when it comes to the 4 species, Jeff, I mean, look, look, I can't tell you we have them. It's interesting that they say that. I do believe we for sure have the Greys because of Roswell. I've always thought we definitely have those. The other ones, I honestly don't have a clue. Um, and what I would say is that, it's interesting. I think Wendell's idea of us kind of picturing maybe things that we are comfortable with and versus things that we're not comfortable with as we get into the reptilians and we get into the mantis. I hate to call them insectoids. I'd rather refer to them as mantis. But so it is, and I've always, like I said, I've heard stories of the Nordics. So I'm kind of with Wendell. I'm not sure I believe we have, but I could potentially see if you're going to believe that we've encountered them so many times that maybe they aren't biologics that we have, but rather biologics that we know at the deepest depths of our government. Maybe these are ones that we have agreements with, as far as technology or humanity or whatnot. So, look, I think there are a lot more than that. Obviously, if you think about how big space is, there's got to be so many more. It's whether or not the species were have the technology get to us, right? I mean, from their
Yeah.
world to our world, you got to travel at a high rate of speed, which makes me think that there's more of a time continuum, a way of splitting through these worlds versus actually traveling that far. So I don't know, the world, the buried stories and the world's eventually going to see. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Well, Wendell,
I
any final thoughts?
yeah, yeah. Like when Steve mentioned the one coming out of in the movie when he came out of the craft there at the end of Close Encounters, he was kind of like a mantis on all fours at first before they stood up. Like when he peeked out, I think he was. Uh, the other thing is, uh, good show by the way, good topic. The I think we have to fight against assuming they are any alien race because they get here that they're smarter than us in every way. I think we have to fight against that because they could actually be as ignorant and dumb as us in a lot of phases. They're just really good at space travel. They may not be able to shoot a basketball. They may not be able to make a medicine. One thing that Roswell showed you was what they are good at is that you know how they combine different metals uh, to form another metal. We didn't do that before Roswell. You know, the alloys and things. So so maybe what they're good at is what we see, but I think we have to fight against the inherent thought that they're better in us and they're better than us in every way because they can travel here or get here. And that's all the species. I mean, as bad as humans are, we're really good at a lot of things. And and that might be pretty impressive to other races, the things we do, the things we can do and build upon and things of that nature. So I think that's just one thing I wanted to get out there. I think we got to fight the thought that they are better than us in every single way just because they can get here. That's not necessarily true. They might be quite ignorant in a lot of things that we're fluent in.
Right.
We'll just
It's funny you bring that up, and that remind me back in the I think early 2000s, I was still working at this factory, and I brought up the fact that I was talking about aliens with somebody, and I said, "Man, they got to be impressively smart." He goes, "Maybe they're stupid." I'm like, "No, they can't be stupid. They get here. We can't get anywhere." And he's like, "All right, put you next to a turtle." I said, "All right." He goes, "You drive your car here. It takes the turtle forever. Does that make you smarter?" "Oh, you're still the same asshole over here that you were at home." So,
yeah,
yeah, maybe you're right.
yeah, yeah. I think we immediately go there. They are dominant in every way, and I
Right.
think that's the case. I really,
Yeah.
and I think there's some folks that know that, and that's
Right.
why
Right.
we're able to capture and test ourselves. I mean, we're doing the same thing to them that the Greys are doing to us when we get
Right. Right.
them.
True that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jeff Mercurial along with Randall Brown, Steve Mercurial. We thank you for watching. If you have a comment, leave a comment below. Hit that like button, subscribe. If you have a story that you'd like to share with us or you want to come in and talk about it, great. Email us at buriedstories74, all one word, buriedstories74 at gmail.com. Thank you for watching.